The world flipped one quiet night in hell, not with fire or screams, but with a strange, almost polite distortion that rewrote every identity like a script edited mid-performance. And by morning, the Hazbin Hotel still stood tall in its chaotic glory, only now every face carried a mirrored truth, every voice shifted pitch, every presence felt both familiar and off, and at the center of this inverted stage stood ALASTOR. No longer the sharply dressed radio demon with a gentleman's grin, but a tall, poised woman whose smile cut just as deep, whose voice carried that same vintage hum, but now with a velvet edge that lingered longer than it should. And she embraced the shift with ease, because control was never tied to form. It lived in presence, and her presence still dominated every room she entered. Charlie, now Charles, still ran the hotel with hopeful stubbornness, his optimism clashing with the new tone of his voice, but never losing strength, while Vaggie, now Vag, carried a sharper, heavier energy, his protectiveness turning more physical, more direct, and Angel Dust, now Angela, leaned harder into charm, her voice dripping with confidence that masked deeper cracks, and the dynamic between them all felt like a stage play performed with swapped masks but the same script, except ALASTOR had no intention of following any script. Because chaos, when refined, became entertainment, and tonight she sought a new kind of amusement, something rare in hell, something unpredictable even to her. And that was when the idea of drinking came to her, not as a need but as an experiment, because control fascinated her, and losing it, even slightly, felt like poking a sleeping beast just to watch it stir. The bar in the hotel was dim, lit with a soft crimson glow that made every glass shimmer like it held secrets. And Husk, now Hestia, stood behind the counter with the same tired eyes and sharp instincts, already sensing trouble the moment ALASTOR approached, her heels clicking in a steady rhythm that echoed like a countdown. And without asking, she took a seat, crossing her legs with calculated grace as she looked at the bottles lined up like soldiers waiting for orders, and Hestia raised a brow, knowing better than to question directly, but still unable to ignore the shift in energy. And when ALASTOR spoke, her voice carried that usual cheer, but with a subtle curiosity woven through it, a tone that suggested this was not a request but a declaration. She wanted something strong, something that burned, something that could challenge her composure, and Hestia hesitated for half a second before pouring a glass of something dark and heavy, sliding it across the counter with a warning in her eyes that went unspoken, because warnings rarely worked on beings like ALASTOR. The first sip was measured, controlled, analyzed, her expression barely shifting as the liquid hit, but inside something flickered, a warmth that spread faster than expected, not overwhelming but noticeable, like static in a perfect broadcast. And she smiled wider, intrigued, because this was new. This was a variable she had not accounted for. And she took another sip, then another, each one chipping away at the precise control she held so tightly, not enough to break it, not yet, but enough to bend it. And bending control was a dangerous game, because once it started, it rarely stopped where you wanted. Across the room, Charles noticed first, his hopeful energy pausing mid-sentence as he watched ALASTOR lean back slightly, her posture still elegant but less rigid, her smile stretching a bit too wide. And Vag followed his gaze, tension rising instantly because anything unusual about ALASTOR meant trouble, while Angela simply watched with interest, a grin forming as she recognized the signs of someone stepping into unfamiliar territory, and the room slowly shifted focus toward the bar, like an audience sensing the start of an unexpected act. ALASTOR set her glass down with a soft tap, her fingers lingering on the rim as she let out a quiet laugh. One that echoed strangely, less controlled, more genuine, and that alone felt wrong, because she never laughed without purpose, never expressed without calculation. But now the edges blurred, and she turned her head slightly, her eyes scanning the room with a new kind of curiosity. Not the calculated observation of a predator, but the loose, drifting interest of someone letting go, just a little. And that was when she asked for another drink. Not because she needed it, but because she wanted to see how far this could go. Hestia poured again, slower this time, watching closely, and ALASTOR didn't wait. She took the glass immediately, downing more than before, and the warmth grew stronger, pushing against her control like pressure building behind a locked door. And her voice shifted again when she spoke, softer at first, then sharper, fluctuating in ways that felt unpredictable, and the room grew quieter, because this was something none of them had seen before. The radio demon, now the radio lady, stepping into instability. She stood up suddenly, the movement smooth but slightly delayed, like her body and mind were no longer perfectly in sync, and she began to walk, her heels clicking unevenly now, her usual rhythm disrupted, and she spoke as she moved, words flowing faster than usual, ideas jumping from one thought to another without the tight structure she always maintained. And for the first time, her presence felt chaotic in a raw way, not the controlled chaos she curated, but something unfiltered. And that made everyone uneasy, because controlled chaos could be managed. But this was something else. She stopped near the center of the room, turning slowly as if addressing an invisible audience, her grin wide, her eyes brighter, and she began to speak about the inversion, about the way everything had shifted, her tone mocking yet fascinated, as if she found humor in the idea that identity could be flipped so easily, and she laughed again, louder this time, the sound echoing with a strange distortion that hinted at her true nature slipping through the cracks, and shadows around her flickered, reacting to her instability, stretching and twisting in ways that didn't match the light. Charles stepped forward cautiously, trying to keep his voice calm as he asked if she was all right. But Alastair turned to him with a look that froze him in place, not out of anger but out of unpredictability, because her expression changed too quickly, from amused to curious to something darker. And she leaned in slightly, her voice dropping as she questioned what all right even meant, her words slurring just enough to show the alcohol taking hold, and then she laughed again, pulling back as if the question itself amused her, and Angela clapped slowly from the side, clearly entertained, while Vag tensed further, ready to step in if things escalated. Alastair moved again, pacing now, her movements less precise, more fluid, and she began to hum, a soft tune that warped as it echoed, turning into something almost musical, almost hypnotic. And the room felt it, that subtle pull, that strange influence she always carried, now amplified by her lack of restraint. And it became clear that this was not just a simple case of drunkenness. This was power slipping through cracks, leaking into the environment, turning her into something even more unpredictable than before. She reached for another drink without asking, grabbing the bottle this time, and Hestia tried to stop her but hesitated, because interfering directly with Alastair, even like this, carried risks. And Alastair took a long sip straight from the bottle, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand in a gesture that felt wildly out of character. And she laughed again, louder, freer, her composure unraveling piece by piece, and for a moment she looked almost human, almost vulnerable. But that illusion shattered quickly as her shadows twisted again, reacting violently now, stretching across the walls like living things. She turned suddenly, pointing at Angela with a grin, her voice rising as she commented on how interesting it was to see everyone flipped, how roles changed but desires stayed the same, how chaos adapted. And Angela responded with a smirk, playing along. But even she seemed slightly cautious now, because this version of Alastair was harder to read, harder to predict, and unpredictability in hell often led to destruction. The tension built slowly, like a storm gathering, and then, just as quickly as it rose, it shifted, because Alastair stopped moving, her body going still as she blinked a few times, her smile faltering for a brief second. And in that moment, it was clear that the alcohol had reached a peak, her control stretched to its limit, and she exhaled slowly, her posture straightening just a bit, her expression settling into something closer to her usual self, but not fully, never fully. And she let out one last laugh, quieter now, almost reflective, as if she had learned something from this experience, something she would not share but would keep, analyze, and perhaps use later. Because even in chaos, she gathered information, always observing, always calculating. And as she set the bottle down and adjusted her stance, the room slowly relaxed, the tension easing. But the memory of what they had just witnessed lingered, because they had seen a side of Alastair that should not exist, a version without full control. And that was far more dangerous than the one they knew. And as she walked away from the bar, her steps regaining their rhythm, her smile sharpening once more, it became clear that this experiment, this brief surrender to intoxication, was not a mistake in her eyes, but a data point, a new layer to her understanding of herself and the world. And that made it all the more unsettling, because if she chose to explore it again, there was no telling how far she would go.